It was really very terrible and tragic news to hear about what happened in Colorado over the weekend. It was heartbreaking. And there was the heartbreaking news from Syria and heartbreaking news from India and more heartbreaking news from Japan. In fact, the world is full of heartbreaking news every day. Just heartbreaking. And, you know, there's discussion about, well, we should do something about gun control. And there are people who, we should eliminate guns. And there are people who say, don't eliminate guns because then only the criminals will have guns and who will protect us. And if you're, you know, an ethnic minority, maybe you say, well, then the police are the only people who have guns and who will protect us from them. And there's something to that, all of it. And then the other thing is, in Mexico, guns are illegal, and in India and in Nepal, guns are illegal. Nobody has them, except people who can afford to buy them on the black market, and they're completely common. So everybody on each side of the discussion has some positive point to make. You know, I feel so bad for that poor schlub who did all this stuff. I mean, what possessed this man to do that? Well, you know, it's very interesting to know, a very interesting statistic is that something like more than 90% of the people who are incarcerated for violent crime in this country have a history of head injury. People who do these terrible things aren't fully responsible. The people who respond to these terrible things aren't, you know, fully in touch with the problem. And here we are living in a world that's filled with misery. And if you look at the news, the only thing you can get is depressed. You know, I, in my youth, invested an enormous amount of energy in a modestly successful effort to mobilize people for civil rights for everyone in this country and against the Vietnam War. And yet, today, racism is still a major issue in national politics. I mean, it's mind-blowing, really. What? And we've been in, how many wars? We've been at war nonstop since the end of the Vietnam War. The United States has 900 offshore military bases. If we reduce that by half, we could pay for the education and health care of every child in the United States. And what the hell do we have a community for in the first place if it isn't to help each other, raise our children, and care for our elderly and our sick? What do we have it for? Anyway, you know, we had tremendous imbalances in the beginning of the 20th century in places like Russia and China. Tremendous inequity in the distribution of resources that resulted in the Russian Revolution and the Chinese Revolution, and the emergence of communism as a political system. And then what happened was Lenin became just like the Tsar, and Mao became just like the Emperor. And today, the systems in Russia and China are just as equally imbalanced as they were in those days. my observation is that you become what you hate. Where to put our feet down, where to take a stand, where to make an effort for our own betterment and the betterment of our fellow man, which I think resides somewhere in the heart of almost everybody. These questions, are not simple questions. This issue was being discussed even, 2,500 years ago in an Indian scripture called the Bhagavad Gita. And there's a long discussion. I mean, it's a complex and layer by layer layout of a point. But basically what he says is, that the world is a total unity. All of this complexity and all of this contention and conflict arises out of the extraordinary creative capacity of this total unity. And it is those people who understand this total unity who reside in the awareness of this total unity, who will be elevated above the conflict and preserved from all of the suffering and the struggle that is implicit in the endless cycles of death and rebirth. And so, a spiritual life is about freeing your mind and your emotions from all of this complex world of negative feedback. Because that's what it is. It's all negative feedback. Societies and cultures exist to keep you in the place you were born. To keep you in the orbit that you were birthed into. But when you begin to liberate, you to release your attachments to all of this external struggle and negative feedback, and turn your attention to your own heart. And through your conscious choice, which you have to make, through your conscious choice to begin to tune into the love and the joy and the beauty that resides in each of us, and begin to live from that information, that suddenly, or maybe slowly, but the possibility awakens for us to be empowered to live a completely different and deeper, richer, finer quality of life experience, which just by opening our hearts changes the vibration in us, and it changes the vibration in the lives in all the people that we're connected to. And in daily accessing this deeper, finer, sweeter, richer, truer dimension of us, and beginning to live from that, we really do have a chance to rise above all of the paradox and the struggle and the heartbreak and the negative feedback, and start to have a meaningful life experience which is filled with actions that benefit us and benefit our fellow man at the same time. For me, the only hope that we have as human beings passing through this difficult period where the whole world is going to change, is to be able to access a deeper and finer place in us, to access the strength and the resource to transcend our own fear and our own anger and our own frustration, to transcend within ourselves the struggle that is the world, and come to a place inside of genuine equanimity and love. Genuine, not contrived. I mean, I could sit here and say, all you guys need to be compassionate. And then we'll go out and we'll try to be compassionate to everybody for a day or two until somebody screws with us, and then we'll get so pissed. And then we'll feel bad about the fact that we got pissed and we weren't compassionate. So we'll go and redouble our efforts to be compassionate, which will, when we fail, triply piss us off. And we live in these cycles of action and reaction, which, it's hopeless. And this understanding of changing ourselves is so simple when we take the time to actually make contact with our bodies and our feelings and our breath. And holding that contact, coming back to it again and again in our day, finding a flow within ourselves of sweetness, a flow within ourselves of understanding and creativity, which in the simplest ways changes our day and changes our relationships and changes our work. You can believe in Buddha, you can believe in Krishna, you can believe in Jesus, you can believe in Moses, you can believe in Allah, you can believe anything you want to believe. I don't care about belief at all. Believe what you want. Most of our beliefs, as it turns out, and we live our lives, turn out to be wrong anyway. So fine, believe anything. But, if everybody who believed anything they want to believe took the time to feel their bodies and their breath and to open their hearts and minds every day and make a small effort to keep them open, the world would be a fantastically finer place where there would be infinitely more cooperation and infinitely less conflict and an infinitely more beneficial environment for the real growth of human understanding, of human wisdom, of human compassion, of human love. It was really a, terrible thing that happened this weekend, and the fact is, probably some other terrible things are going to happen too. I mean, doesn't it just piss you off that those idiots in Japan built a nuclear reactor right on a fault that has a known periodicity of breaking? I mean, the stupidity and the greed is mind-boggling. But there's nothing we can do about that. What we can do something about, each of us, is changing ourselves and changing for the better the lives of the people that we interact with every day.